silent, you'll not find love. Only sleepless nights. I'm just a ghost of the man I was, too weary to fight.
Hey guys, welcome to Beyond the Beard, a podcast dedicated to discovering true masculinity. Matt is back with us today. He brought a special topic. We're gonna start our series. So part of what we want to do with this podcast is we want to review men from history that we think are great men that bring a lot of value and that can help us discover what it means to be a man. And so Matt has picked a guy, and so we're kicking off our series. But first off, Matt, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great, man.
Yeah,
I'm off vacation. Like,
You
I
are
feel
off.
great.
Yeah.
School started this week. Yeah, I'm raring to go. Yeah, it feels good. It feels like it's when you know you love teaching, is when summer ends.
Yeah.
And you're excited.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a lot of teachers who feel that way. I
No.
am definitely one of them, and I guarantee there's probably some teachers watching this and are like, that dude's crazy.
Yeah.
No, I love my summer. I love that break, but man, it's great to get back and just start looking at what I'm doing and trying to get better at it, and you know, realizing I get to hang out with a bunch of cool kids again for a whole year.
That's
so
awesome.
How about you? Hanging in there?
Yeah, doing good, man. It's been a busy week. Yeah, a lot of stuff going on at home, and
Yep.
and summer's coming to an end, and that means kids are going back to school, which for us that makes it easier because
yeah.
with the kids at home all the time, obviously it's fun, we love it, but then also you're like, okay, you can go back to school now. It's kind of that what's the holiday song where they say and parents can't wait for school to start again.
Yep. Yep.
Didn't catch that when I was a kid, but it resonates so much with me as an adult now. I'm like, yes, go back to school. Michael, how are you, buddy?
I gotta get so much better at this. This is terrible. I lost the camera at the very first switch. I was like, where is it? Okay.
Where is it? Well, you found it. There
So
you
many
are.
buttons. I'm doing good. I'm excited to have Matt back. I'm looking forward to this one, actually. So yeah, work's been a little hectic. So this is a nice little reprieve. for
Yep.
me. I
That's
enjoy
true. It
this a
has been a
lot.
couple weeks, man.
It
was
has
a
been.
fast
Yeah.
couple weeks for me
Yep.
because I was boating and swimming and
Yeah, that's good. I'm
going
glad
on the lake. It
pictures
was
look really
awesome.
good.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, it was
good,
a
man.
blast.
That's good.
So
Well, Matt, why don't you introduce our
Yeah.
audience to who you're going to be reviewing today?
But before I even do that, kind of the foundation for this even idea of a series of looking at good men from history. Aristotle talks about how to become better at a virtue, you must look to virtuous people,
Yeah.
right? And so we kind of started looking at masculinity from that perspective as well. This idea that if we want to become better men, we need to look to good men and emulate what they do.
That's right.
And so this idea of masculinity, we're going to look at men who we would consider to be masculine and analyze them and talk about just kind of who they were and look at the positive aspects of that masculinity and who they were as men. So
Yeah.
Today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite men from history ever, and his name is Audie Murphy. A lot of people have not heard of this guy's name.
Nope.
Whenever I ask my students, there's very rarely will I have a person raise their hand. I think I've had only one person who actually could tell me who he was or even anything about him at all.
Dang,
One
yeah.
student, which again, I teach seventh graders, not that surprising.
I couldn't have told you who he was.
Yeah,
Like,
there's not a lot of people who've heard this guy's name, Audie Murphy. If you want to put up a picture of him, I don't know if you have that already.
Yeah, give me a second.
But Audie Murphy, the reason why I remember him so fondly, not only because of what he did and who he was, but I distinctly remember being at my grandpa's house as a kid. And my grandpa had all these old movies. He had Hopalong Cassidy, Lone
Yeah,
Ranger,
yeah.
The Longest Day, these old war movies, right? John
Yeah.
Wayne movies, stuff like that. And he had this movie called To Hell and Back. And it was a World War II movie. And I was like, oh, this looks really cool. And I asked my grandpa, hey, can I watch this? And he goes, oh, of course you can. He's like, do you know who that is, right? And I said, no, I don't. And so we sat down, and I think Mike's going to pull up a
It's already
picture
up,
of
I
the
think.
movie.
Yeah, here,
is already up.
IMDb,
that's
and
that side's
Oh,
live.
that side's the one that's.
Yeah.
okay,
So
good. That makes me, I thought it was the left side.
This is like, I think, the most popular cover of
Yeah,
that movie
and that's
right there.
I actually
It's a
have
little
that
hard to
movie,
see.
and that was the movie my grandpa
Yeah.
had. And
That's
so
awesome.
I sat down and watched it, and it is the true story of Audie Murphy serving in World War II, and he actually plays himself in the movie. So when you see that front cover, that is actually him.
That's cool.
Playing himself. So after World War II, he did become a movie star.
Man, that's
which is
I go ahead. No, sorry.
it's pretty cool. No, go ahead.
I was just thinking, man, I would love to live a life where I get to be asked to play myself in a movie. Like I'm so good that nobody else can play me.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's
yeah.
awesome.
So let me tell you a little bit about this guy,
Yeah.
and then we'll actually jump into his
Yes,
service
who
in
is
World
this
War
man
II.
called Audie Murphy?
So Audie Murphy, born in Virginia in 1925, and he was born to sharecropper. His dad was sharecropper, and so very poor.
Yeah.
Learned to hunt as a young kid, learned to shoot. And then December 7th, 1941 rolls around, and as we know, what happens December 7th, 1941?
Pearl Harbor.
Pearl Harbor! Nice job. I
I was like, wait,
was gonna
is this
say,
a trick
man.
question?
No, it is not a trick question. So Pearl Harbor's attacked by the Japanese, day which will live in infamy. And the United States declares war on the Empire of Japan. Germany declares war on the U.S. And officially we have the United States joining World War II and really making it a world war. We now have the Western Hemisphere joining the war. And Audie Murphy is 17 at the time, so he can't join the military technically by age.
Right.
And so he tries to join up, and people are like, nah, dude, you're too young. And even though even if you were old enough, we wouldn't take you, because you got to realize he was like, I think he was 5'5",
Dang.
and he weighed at that time he weighed like 140 pounds.
I would
150
tower over
pounds.
this man.
Oh, dude, I know,
gosh.
right?
Why can't
I mean-
that be? Man, I need to
you
find
look
some more
at
of
me.
those people.
I'm not the biggest buffest dude. I'm working at it, but I'm not the biggest buffest guy, and I weigh 200 pounds.
Yeah.
And I'm 6 feet tall. This dude was about 6 inches shorter than me.
Yeah.
And
I don't have
at
anything on
that
his height or
time, he
weight,
weighed,
but-
I think they said he weighed like 140, 150 pounds. So he's not a big dude, right?
Yeah.
And he's trying.
Yeah, he was 5'5".
5'5". Yep. And
Short.
yeah, he was short dude, not very big. I mean, and again, just that picture. If you are picturing a warrior,
Yeah.
are you picturing a guy who's 5'5" and 140 pounds?
Oh no.
Dude, I was 6 foot and I weighed 140 pounds when I was in high school. That's terrifying. Senior year, I was like 145 pounds. It's the heaviest I ever got. And, this idea that initially you could see why nobody wanted him. You could see why the Navy declined. You could see why the Marines were like, dude, what are you thinking?
Yeah.
Eventually, his sister helps him fake his age, forges his mom's signature, saying that he's 18, and the Army finally takes him. Because the Army will take anyone, and even they didn't want him, right?
Right.
Because he's like, he's 5'5", weighs 140 pounds. They're like,
This feels very like.
what are you
Steve
going
Rogers.
to do for us? What is this?
I was just,
This
don't,
sounds
don't
very-
steal my thunder.
Sorry.
I literally, okay, keep going.
Were you going to say
We'll-
Steve Rogers?
Oh my God, yes. I literally, last night, okay, so we talked about doing this, and last night, I'm trying to like watch some of the Marvel movies with the kids and stuff.
yeah.
And so we're going through some of them.
Yep.
And
We just watched all. I'm sorry, I'm cutting. you.
No,
we
you're
just watched
good.
literally through the Endgame series.
Jeez.
Like this
Holy
summer
cow,
with
man.
Zoe, she wanted to watch them. Also, we watched them from the beginning.
That's
the end.
commitment.
It is, but now we have to go to old movies because we realize she's never seen like Jurassic Park and stuff. But anyway, sorry, you were
No,
saying
you're good.
Yeah.
And so anyway, we picked event because we were kind of at the beginning, and so we picked Captain America.
Nice.
And it was hilarious because I'm watching this. I'm like, that's Audie Murphy. I looked up.
Yes,
I looked
it
it up.
is.
I was like, was Captain America based on Audie Murphy? And the answer, I believe, is no.
No.
Which is crazy.
I
But
know.
That's even better. Like,
Art imitating life.
Yep.
Crazy.
So you have this, you got this skinny kid who isn't, now his argument was the doctor who, helped deliver him couldn't remember when he was actually born. So, I mean, he could have been 18. He wasn't 18.
Yeah.
He was 17, right? So he's 17 years old,
Yeah.
and he gets shipped off to North Africa,
Okay.
to fight in North Africa. This is the beginning of World War II, and the U.S. is
Yeah.
getting involved. So we're not in France yet.
Okay.
We're not in Italy yet. And he, on the way over, he gets incredibly sick, okay? Because he didn't realize, because, I mean, he's from, Virginia. He's not
Yeah.
going out on boats all the time.
Yeah.
He gets seasick, so he's vomiting the whole way over. He loses even more weight, right? So when
Oh
they get
my
there,
gosh.
basically they're like, "Dude, you're gonna die," and he's like, "No, I want to fight. Okay, so, he fights. He serves in North Africa. Then after his service in North Africa, I believe he's promoted to is it sergeant. Or no, it's corporal first. I think it's corporal. And then they start moving into Sicily.
Yeah.
And he fights in Sicily. He fights in Italy. And Italy is where you really start seeing, Italy and Sicily is you really start seeing him come into his own. By the time they get out of Italy, he's a second lieutenant.
Oh, whoa.
Yeah. A couple of the stories about what went down. In Salerno in Italy, he kills 5 Germans. They're ambushed, and he and one other guy, I think it was him and one other guy, survive, and they kill all 5 Germans who ambushed them.
Yeah.
Okay. So he gets promoted for that, and I think he won some medal. I forgot which one. Then he goes to Anzio, and the Battle of Anzio was just miserable in Italy. It's on the coast of Italy, and it's just they're bogged down with rain. Everything's covered in mud. He and his men destroy a tank. They blow off the treads, and then that night they can hear the Germans are repairing it. So he and his men sneak out. And one of the things I want to point out here, if you want to know who you want to follow who you want to be your leader, it's whoever always goes first. He's the guy who always went first, right? So they then actually blow up the tank and prevent it from being repaired, and then sneak back to where they're staying in sort of these dilapidated, broke down houses. Another true story. So this dude is already doing some pretty incredible things. Okay, then D-Day happens. They then get moved to France, so they're pushing into France, and this is where we see the legend of Audie Murphy truly take shape.
By the way, when you asked me the date earlier, I paused because I was like, wait, is that D-Day? No. Yeah. So anyway,
D-Day,
that's
June 6th.
Yeah. Anyway, keep going. I didn't
Don't
think
worry.
you were going to start there. I'm smart, guys. I really am.
You're good. Don't worry.
Sorry.
This is why I teach.
Completely derailed.
No, you're good. So, fights in North Africa, fights in Italy.
Yeah.
Italy was pretty miserable too. It actually had a really big effect on him later in life, and we'll talk about that when we talk about him post-war. But he gets to France, and he and his men are moving into the French countryside.
Yeah.
And he takes a German machine gun nest. He and another buddy take a German machine gun nest. The Germans in a nearby house pretend to surrender, and his best friend stands up to accept their surrender, and they shoot him and kill him.
Dang.
So he sees his best friend get killed right in front of him. He then charges the house alone, by himself, charges the house with a machine gun, and kills, I believe he killed 6 Germans, wounded 2, and took 11 prisoners by himself, takes the entire house.
How do you take 11 prisoners by yourself? That's amazing.
Well, when you see one dude bust into a house, kill 6 of your friends, wound 2 more.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
I mean, think about that. And so, and at the end, there was a quote from one of the guys who was there with him. People saw him do this, just charge by himself, head on into a defended position.
That's insane.
And takes it all by himself. And then he's seen weeping over his best friend's body.
Dang.
Yeah, pretty hardcore stuff. That's not even the thing that won him the Medal of Honor, by the way.
Okay.
Audie Murphy then, later on, as they're pushing into France, they run into a German advance. I believe it was 250 infantrymen and 6 panzers. One of their tanks gets blown up. He jumps on the tank, orders his men to retreat, and then holds off for about the next hour, calling in artillery strikes, and sitting on top of a burning tank, holds off the entire advance. He gets shot through the leg, and they said, this is his men, not him, said he killed at least 50 Germans by himself. He then jumps off the tank, limps back as it explodes, and that is how Audie Murphy earns himself the Medal of Honor. This is actually from the Arlington National Cemetery website. It says, on January 26, 1945, near the village of Holtzwihr in eastern France, Lieutenant Murphy's forward positions came under fierce attack by the Germans against the onslaught of 6 panzer tanks and 250 infantrymen. Murphy ordered his men to fall back to better their defenses alone. He mounted an abandoned burning tank destroyer and with a single machine gun contested the enemy's advance. Wounded in the leg during the heavy fire, Murphy remained there for nearly an hour, repelling the attack of German soldiers on 3 sides and single-handedly killing around 50 of them. His courageous performance stalled the German advance and allowed him to lead his men in a counterattack, which ultimately drove the enemy from Holtzwihr. For this, Murphy was awarded the Medal of Honor.
He's literally Captain America. That's dang. That's amazing.
Dude, 5'5", like 145 pounds.
That's nuts. So like, so is he? What happens to him after that?
So I want to ask a question though first.
Yeah,
Like, you hear that story.
sure.
Does that sound like a true story to you?
No.
This sounds like my nephews recalling their Call of Duty. Like,
I was gonna
that's
say,
what this sounds like.
It sounds like a Call of Duty
Dude,
game.
I went in, I got frags. I'm like, no, you didn't. No. Okay, sure.
I went 50-0 in my Battlefield game.
360
Yeah,
no
exactly.
scopes. And like,
Exactly.
no, you didn't.
But it's not Call of Duty. It's not a movie. It's
Yeah.
not fake. It's a real man.
Yeah.
I mean, at that time, he was what, 20? I think he was 21 at that time, or 20. I think he was 20
Okay.
years old. Because it was
Said
2 years into
45,
his service.
yeah,
He was
yeah,
about
yeah.
20, 21. Think about that. 20, 21 years old. Faked his age to get into the army.
Dang.
And 2 years later,
Yeah.
he becomes the most decorated. I believe he's the most decorated foot soldier from the United States during World War II.
Dang.
How wild is that?
I mean, it doesn't sound real. Like you said, it doesn't sound like that's something that could have actually happened.
It sounds like a fictional story.
And honestly, like given today's climate of what I would say masculinity, that seems near impossible.
Yeah.
Because I think personally, I like to think that I could be capable of something like that. But then I take stock of myself, and I'm like, I'd probably be peeing my pants and like running the other way.
Imagine the courage it takes to stand there.
I was going to say, like, it's kind of
250 to 1.
on that same thing. Like you said, if you look at athletics nowadays, like as an analogous example,
Yeah.
like everyone likes to armchair coach, and
Yep.
they're like, oh yeah, I could totally do that. LeBron is no big deal. I'm like, he's a fraction of a percentage of the population that can actually even get close to this.
Yeah.
And even we brought up the example of video games, like this example that you brought up, it's literally something guys, even in that age, still kind of aspire to. Like we still, even in video games, are trying to emulate that real world action. And it's kind of crazy that that's how it's mirrored.
It's an unbelievable story.
Yeah.
It's literally, I mean, it's you don't have all those witnesses and the fact that these are his men reporting it,
Right.
not him.
Right.
Think 250 to 1. There was he gave a quote. It's in his autobiography, which is also called To Hell and Back.
Yeah.
He said, being on that tank, that burning tank, he said, the only thing I could think about was the machine gun was giving me decent cover. It was a turret, so it had a
Yep.
big metal shield. And that it was nice to have my feet warm for the first time in months.
Dang.
Think about that for just a second. Like, I'm getting charged by 250 men. I'm unloading on them by myself on this burning tank. And the only thing I'm thinking about is, man, it feels good to have my feet warm again. He's like, that's what was going through my head was, oh, it feels good to have my feet warm. Like,
That's funny.
this guy is 20 years old.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
unbelievable, man. It's
Well,
unbelievable.
that shows you the kind of like conditions
Mhm.
that those guys were operating in then, right? Man, that's
Can you imagine how miserable war is? Like that's something else that and we'll get into that
Yeah.
more with the post-war discussion about
Sure,
him. But
sure.
when you look at, like, I remember reading Stephen Ambrose's book, Band of Brothers, and reading the chapters in Bastogne, and just how they talked about just think about the coldest you've ever been in your life, multiply it by 2,
Yeah.
and then go sit in a hole
Yeah.
and have people shooting you and trying to blow you up. And that was life in Bastogne for those men for literally a month. And then another month after when they were, counterattacking.
Yeah.
Like, what just a miserable existence for those men to be able to not only survive it,
Yeah.
but it's, you think about the mental toll
Yeah, absolutely.
that takes, not just the body, but the mind.
Well, and man, I think our views on war have been so skewed now because even and I'm going to say this as like a civilian. I've never served. I've never been to war. But my I have lots of friends who've served. My dad spent a year over in Afghanistan as a contractor at Bagram Air Force Base when it was getting like this is probably 2012. But he was, they're still taking like rocket fire fairly regularly.
Yeah.
But so I have a somewhat of an idea in the sense of like conceptually and modern warfare is way more comfortable than what we're talking about World War I, World War II. Because think about all the stuff we fly over so that our soldiers can be like, we create barracks for them that have things like electricity, running water, some modern comforts. They get shipped, stuff regularly. They have a chow hall that they can go and get like okay food on a regular basis. Yes, they still have to go out on missions. Yes, they still have to go and deal with some of the horrific things. But I think our concept of what war actually is and has been historically is very warped because, and that's the other thing, how quickly can you get off the front lines? Nowadays, you can get off the front lines in a day or two, right? I mean, you can literally it can be a few hours and they fly you off the front lines. Whereas, we're talking World War II. It's weeks.
The guy's best owner surrounded for
exactly.
a month.
Exactly.
On that side note, we don't need to get this. I just want to point out, the fact that we can get off the front lines so quickly is actually more detrimental for soldiers nowadays.
You also got to realize in modern war, there's not fronts are very I think about something like Ukraine versus Russia. Yeah, there's a front, but if you look at something like Vietnam, there wasn't a front.
No, there
you look
wasn't.
at Afghanistan, there wasn't a front.
No.
It's the battle is going on everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
That's a different conversation we can have
sure,
about
and that's
Vietnam and stuff like
guerrilla.
that, but
yeah. Anyway, sorry.
No, you're good. You're good.
I just want to point that out for the audience, and I think we don't understand how tough this dude was.
Oh yeah,
because again, we view warfare through our modern eyes, and the things that we have nowadays, and so I think that I'm saying that because I think it diminishes. We allow that to diminish how we see people from World War II era, right? Or before.
And I think it's also diminished a little bit by we've turned war into a commodity to an extent, right? Movies, video games, right? Which, I mean, I'm not saying I don't play war games. I love my war games, especially like Allied Assault and all those old ones. I love those.
Yeah.
But I guess I remember as a kid being like, yeah, this is so cool. And then getting older and being a historian. And I want to bring this up for those of you watching. Something I teach my students, it's on the very first day of class. I always ask them the question, how do we study history? Now, not just the why. We do talk about why we study history.
Sure.
But I always ask the question, how?
Yeah.
How do you study history?
Yeah.
And a lot of times they say, oh, well, we read textbooks. I'm like, okay, what else? Okay. And I usually change my question. From what point of view do you study history?
Right. Yep.
You have to study history from the eyes of the people who lived it. You cannot study history from your own eyes. If you study history from your own eyes, you are going to create a skewed version of it, and you are not going to actually truly understand history.
Yep.
You have to look at World War II from the eyes of the people who lived it, whether that be the soldiers on either side, whether that be the civilians, whether it be the people back at home. When you're studying history, you have to do it from the point of view of those people. And that right there is a skill that you can apply to any aspect of your life.
Yeah.
You really can. It doesn't matter if you're going to go off to be a historian. It doesn't matter if you're going to go off to be a teacher. It doesn't matter if you're going to go off to be an electrician. If you can take a step out of your own shoes and step into somebody else's shoes, you have the ability to identify with that person, right? You have the ability to develop a better relationship. If you're trying to start a business, being able to step out of your shoes and look at it from the point of view of your customer, is that not an important skill?
Oh, that's a key to business, to be honest with you.
And yet, that's what you're learning when you study history the right way.
Yeah.
You're learning how to build good relationships. You're learning how to view the world from other people's eyes. And you're learning to take a step out of yourself. It's another little tactic to learn to be a little bit selfless.
Absolutely.
I bring that up because I want us to understand that as we go into the next portion of this discussion, which is what happens to Audie Murphy after the war. So we had this big war. He comes home. He's discharged medically. I mean, he does go back into the army. He serves in the reserves and stuff, and he does a lot of speeches, but he doesn't go back into combat. He comes back, and there are parades celebrating this guy, right? Everybody, he's a big hero, national hero.
Yeah.
I mean, listen to these awards he won. Here in the Distinguished Service Cross, 2 Silver Stars, 2 Bronze Stars, 2 Presidential Unit Citations, 3 Purple Hearts, Legion of Merit, Legion of Honor, that's from the French, a couple other French medals, and then he also earns, of course, the Medal of Honor. And he's roughly 20 to 21 years old, and he ends up being one of the most decorated foot soldiers in World War II. Absolutely incredible. He's aged 20 to 21, and he's done more with his life than I ever have.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Right? He comes home, and he's a hero. He ends up becoming a movie star. He stars in over 40 films, including To Hell and Back, which he stars in a lot of Westerns, which is really cool.
Okay.
And he stars in his own movie about himself, To Hell and Back. And by the way, I would very much encourage you guys to go watch that movie. It's fantastic. It's
Okay.
not only is it a good movie, there is a little bit of Hollywoodization,
Sure.
but not a lot. If you go and read his story and go read his autobiography and go listen to what the soldiers say about him, the men he
Yeah.
served with, it actually is either pretty accurate, actually kind of downplays some of the stuff he did.
Interesting.
Because it's kind of almost like, it was like, have you ever seen Hacksaw Ridge? You know that they actually downplayed what Desmond Doss did?
no.
Because at
They
the
made
end
the
of
clip bigger.
yeah, they do. But he actually gets, when he gets sniped in the leg, he actually rolls off. They're about to take him back. He rolls off the stretcher and said, take another man first because they're more wounded. I'm fine. He then gets sniped through his arm. It shatters his arm. He makes a splint. Like, the guy literally stayed behind on the battlefield to let other people get taken first. Desmond Doss. They didn't put that in the movie because they said they didn't think people would think it was realistic. They would think that it was too over the top. So they actually excluded it from the movie. I think it was that Mel Gibson? Maybe that one? I can't remember.
I can look that up in a second. But it looks like
yeah.
Audie Murphy actually has 50 title credits.
Is it 50?
As a-
I thought he
as an actor?
starred in 44 movies
It just
total.
gives it's what IMDb
Oh,
is
well,
listed
okay.
where
yeah,
he's
Okay,
got.
I don't know if
credits
it was
he
other
appeared in them.
if it was
Yeah.
other things, but yeah. But anyways, here's the thing though. One of the things, To Hell and Back, by the way, I forgot to mention this, becomes Universal Pictures' most profitable film all the way up until the release of another Universal picture. It was a summer movie about a monstrous creature in the ocean. Jaws. Well, yeah, until Jaws, To Hell and Back is their most profitable film. How
Holy
cool is
cow.
that? It's really interesting. I didn't know
Jaws
that
is
until I
what,
looked it up.
like 80s, 90s?
Yeah, 80s.
Holy cow.
For about, I think,
60 years?
no, because World War II ends in 45. I think To Hell and Back was
yeah,
in the 50s
probably. Yeah,
or
okay.
60s. I
Okay.
can't remember.
Give me
So
a
look,
second.
What
30
year was
years.
To Hell and Back released?
Give me a minute here.
Can't remember.
I should be better at this, but I'm not.
We will-
Is it
55?
55? Okay, I was
We
going to
will
say, I thought it
forgive
was
you,
the
Michael.
50s or 60s. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, really good movie. You should go check it out. It's fantastic. Very sad. And on that note, one of the things that becomes a very defining part of who Audie Murphy was PTSD.
Interesting.
He suffered mightily from post-traumatic stress disorder.
Huh.
It's an important part of his life because you have this kid who's like Captain America, what a hero, war hero, and celebrations and
Yeah.
parades, and now he's a movie star. But what you didn't see going on under the surface was him sleeping with a gun under his pillow, waking up from nightmares. He suffered from insomnia. He'd wake up and throw up because he'd have these horrifying nightmares.
Yeah.
They said he suffered from like headaches 24/7. He saw an article about German orphans and it just brought him to tears because he kept wondering how many of their fathers did I kill? And this is where, again, this discussion of masculinity really comes to a head. Because you have this man who did unbelievable warrior-like things. You want to talk about, we have Conan the Barbarian's sword back here, right?
Yep.
We have these warriors from history and warriors from fantasy and all this stuff. But when you get to the reality of it,
Mhm.
how many of those men suffer greatly
Yeah.
from those accomplishments in
Yeah.
war? Right?
I mean,
And
yeah.
I remember during World War I, suffering from PTSD or suffering from shell shock was considered cowardice.
Mm.
Cowardice.
Mm.
And you have this mighty warrior, this guy who did stuff that was just unbelievable. Video game, movie, ridiculous, unbelievable things.
Yeah.
Literally, a superhero has this
Yeah.
similar storyline.
And in
what-
service
yeah.
to
Yeah.
his country, right?
Yeah.
With a purpose, a good, I would say World War II is one of those only wars where you look at it and you're like, there was good purpose. Fighting
Yeah.
the Nazis was a good purpose.
Yeah, you literally have good versus evil in that.
Oh, you absolutely
right?
do.
And there's really no way to argue that either. I think
unless you're
yeah.
a psycho. But
well, yeah.
And then you see him afterward, and and again, it's like the suffering the man went through afterwards, the headaches, the nightmares. He would have to take. So he was taking pills to put him to sleep, and then
Yep.
eventually he locked himself in a hotel room for like a week to try to break the addiction, and he did, but it was just a miserable week. He was married, then his wife divorced him. She said he was very much an emotional person, a lot of anger
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
but a lot of the anger was coming from the pain.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And again, this is at a time where, do you think he could openly express that?
No, yeah, no.
Do you think
not at
people
all.
would even let him? Remember, he's a war hero.
Yeah.
Oh, an icon.
Yeah, no.
You don't want people to
Well,
see
he has
the
an
weakness.
image, right? Like, yeah, he literally
Yes,
has an
his
image,
image,
to keep up. Yeah.
And the military does too, right?
Yeah.
The military does. I mean, and his agents and whoever else, the people who have investments in his heroism,
Yeah, of course.
boosting him up as a hero, right?
Yep.
And so you see a guy who goes through a lot of pain.
Mm-hmm.
By the end of his life, he was working through it. One of the things he did, Mike, to help himself deal with that pain was actually write poetry.
I'm a fan. That's cool.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, it's one of those things that, like, I mean, you think in the 90s, somebody, if you identified masculinity, would you say poetry?
Yeah, no.
Definitely not, right? I mean,
warrior
think so.
poet is literally a
It is.
It is. It
archetype.
is. But
Yeah.
like, as a young man in high school, do you think we identified poetry with masculinity?
Well, and I no.
I think it's more of like, how
But
are we framing?
Yes.
Yes.
And that's what I'm kind of getting at, is that sort of like false facade of masculinity that we
Right.
see.
right.
And I'm not saying that, again, this is something we'll talk about on this show, or maybe we even have talked about, but that idea of like how our modern culture wants to feminize men's emotions,
Yeah.
right? Like, I think men deal with emotions very differently than women do,
Yep.
right? We do. And you're seeing a lot of where they're trying to get men to deal with their emotions in the way that women do.
Sure.
It's not how it works.
Sure.
That being said, though, when you have men who are truly suffering,
Yeah.
just suffering in silence is not a good idea,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Do you know what kind of community did he have around him? Because as you're talking, and you may not know, like
I don't know. He
we
did
may
get
not have-
remarried. He did get remarried.
Okay.
And he had.
I just
remember-
man, as you're talking, and as you're telling this story, I can't help but think about, like, one of the things that guys dearly need is community, and a community of strong men, where it is, and I hate to say it like this, but it just makes sense, like, where it's safe for guys to be able to express themselves in an emotionally transparent way.
Well, I think there's difference, and I get that. I like how you put that. I think, again, like what I just mentioned was, our society is pushing men to try to share their emotions and express them the ways women do, when it's like,
Sure.
no,
Sure.
that's not how it works. Men are able to compartmentalize.
Yep.
Why do you think this guy was able to, even through all the horrors he went through, able to stand on a machine gun turret with
Sure.
250 soldiers running at him
Yeah.
for an hour and hold him off?
Yep.
Compartmentalization, right?
Sure.
Being able to push aside your fears and stuff like. The problem is, though, it's all, there are times where that becomes like an infected wound, right?
Yeah,
You don't
absolutely.
deal with it.
Yep.
You cover it up, right? And I think that'd be an interesting topic to discuss, is sort of like, how can men, and I'd like to kind of do that in this episode once we get through the end of his story, but how
Sure.
how can we deal with those wounds?
Well, and that,
how,
I mean,
how do we do that in a masculine and a man, in a way that
Sure.
helps men?
sure.
But anyways, end of his story. It does have kind of a sad ending. He dies in a plane crash, 1971. I can't remember exactly. There was like some sort of faulty.
Man, so he
something
wasn't
or
very
other.
old.
No.
He was like in his 50s or early 60s.
Yep. Was when he passed away.
Wow.
And 1971. Yep. But goes down as one of the greatest warriors in the history of mankind.
He was 45.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah,
Dang.
that's creeping up on. I'm creeping up on that
Oh,
I
day.
thought he was
We're
born in
all- we're all-
1925.
At least, yeah, it says June 20th,
So wouldn't he be
1925.
55?
He died May 28th, 1971. I'm just literally reading what
Crazy. Oh
Google
yeah,
has off the
I
top.
thought this 40. Wait, I can't do math.
Oh,
46?
man.
Is
Yeah.
that 46?
Guys, if,
So he
you, if
may
you're,
not
if you're
have
paying
turned-
attention to us
Hey,
for math,
listen, I teach history.
yeah, we're
Yeah.
not going to be good at math on this show. So if you're an engineer, please forgive us.
Also, when you're thinking about other things and then you start thinking about numbers, I'm like, oh man, if I was
There's
thinking about numbers
3,
normally, I'd be
7.
fine. But yeah, kind of a sad ending to his story. But pretty incredible, just incredible dude.
Yeah.
Like, just an incredible man.
Yeah. Okay. So, man, and as I'm thinking about this guy, I guess, what are some of the things that you guys, and I'll kind of throw this out there to both you guys. What are some of the things that you guys, that's hitting you about what does this man's story tell us about masculinity? What are some good things that we can look at from this guy's story?
I mean, I can tell you right now what I first saw is that aspect of masculinity that's a warrior.
Yeah.
Being able to push aside fear, being able to push aside your own livelihood and
Sure.
your life
Yep.
to protect and serve.
Yep.
I don't expect women to do that.
Sure.
I do expect men to be willing to do that.
Yeah.
I think to me that is a very foundational principle in masculinity, is being willing to sacrifice in defense and in protection of the true, the beautiful, and the good.
Right. Right.
And
No,
I think you saw it
yeah.
with this guy.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's very clear. Like, he is very willing. He was very willing to put himself before everybody else, which I
Or
mean,
put everybody else before him.
yeah, sorry. What I meant was, well, but okay, follow me on
Yes.
this. He put himself before everybody else in the sense of he stepped out in front of everybody.
Okay, I get what you're
That's
saying.
what I meant.
get what you're
yeah,
saying.
yeah, I mean, it wasn't
Yeah,
mean
no.
like,
It could mean
I
either
get
way.
that.
yeah,
That
yeah,
makes sense.
yeah. No,
Makes sense.
Literally in front of everything else, or
good recovery, Tim.
I mean, like
I get it.
he did even have to fight to get into that position too. If you look at it, it's not just
Absolutely.
I'm willing to go if I get
Absolutely.
called, or I'm willing to go because I guess it's my duty. It was they're not going to let me in, yet I'm still going to force
Yeah.
my way into that position
Yeah.
because I should. Like,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I am
and-
curious, like what, like his. I need to read more on him. I would be curious to hear like what his internal like motivations were for that, or 'cause there are some people who have, different motivations for
Yeah.
wanting
Sure.
to do something like that.
I
But
Glory,
read
that
but
kind of
hearing
stuff,
stories
yeah.
like that too, like
I
oh,
read
your
his
best friend
biography
dies
a
and-
long time ago when I was a kid. I need to sit down and reread it as an adult.
Yeah.
One of the things I think is interesting too, though, is was he drafted?
No.
He literally, not only did he volunteer,
Yeah.
he faked his age.
Yeah.
In order to volunteer,
Well,
like
and multiple times, right?
he tried to
it
get in
wasn't-
multiple
yeah.
times. Yeah. And wow, how, like, what does that tell you about a guy? I'm not only am I willing to put myself in harm's way, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes
Yeah.
to fight. Compare that thought, that mindset that he had.
Sure.
I need to serve my country so desperately
Yep.
that I will fake my age, do whatever it takes to be able to do that.
Yep.
Compare it to modern day mindsets about.
Yeah, I mean, well, shoot. I mean, and here's the thing. I think taking it culturally and contextually, right? The Vietnam changed our thoughts on
Yes, it
war
did.
like drastically, in part because of the media, but also there's a whole bunch of shady stuff that led to us getting involved in Vietnam. So it was really the first. So I think what I bring that up to say, I think part of our modern influence and our modern attitude towards self-sacrifice for the good of the country is kind of tainted by the views that were started from Vietnam.
Yep.
And I think that part of that is because you had a bunch of guys who were doing things for the wrong reasons, right? I think when you look at World War I, World War II, Korean War, there was a sense of, okay, we know what's right, we know what's wrong.
Yep.
And it's very easy for us to do this. And I think, it wasn't like we were trying to World War II, we were trying to stay out of it, right? Like
Yep.
Europe was on the brink of falling, and
I
we're
mean,
like,
Britain's the only one standing.
yep, yeah,
at
and
that
we're
time.
like, I don't know if we're gonna do this. Like, I know you want us to, but we don't really want to. And it took Japan attacking
Well,
us.
you have a lot of people at the time, if you go and read it, especially
Yep.
newspapers, stuff like that.
Sure.
Europe's fighting another war, guys. We've already lost some of our soldiers literally 20
Yeah.
years ago.
Yeah,
we
stay
lost
away.
young men.
Yep.
Why is it our business? Oh, wait, it's not. That was the
Sure.
attitude.
Sure.
FDR saw Hitler for what he was, though. FDR really wanted to get this involved because he was like, it's not going to stop. If Hitler takes Europe, okay,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
You give a mouse a cookie, he's going to
Yep.
want a glass of milk. If you give a Hitler a Czechoslovakia, he's going to
Yep.
want a Poland and the rest of Europe to go
That's
with.
right. Yep.
And then what happens after he gets Europe? He's
Yep.
going to want Russia.
Hey, Man in a High Tower. If you guys haven't watched that show, it's actually a pretty
I
decent show.
haven't. I should
It's
go watch it.
it literally explores
It's alternate
the,
history, yeah.
yeah, and I love it. But to
I
your
prefer
point,
Wolfenstein for my alternate. Just the Wolfenstein New Order. I didn't play New Colossus because I heard that was trash, but
But no, I mean,
That's
to your point, back to what I was saying in the sense of before Vietnam, there was very easily defined good, right, like there's people dying, they're put in concentration camps,
Yep.
like these atrocities are occurring, and so it makes sense and it becomes easy to jump on board.
Yep.
I think our modern attitude is really tainted by a lot of the evil
Iraq,
and
Iran.
yeah, exactly, all of the evil selfishness and greed of men and women who have been in power.
Yes,
right.
there you go. That's what I was
And,
going to
and that's part of the
what I was gonna
problem,
say.
right? And so I think that when you have our modern our upcoming generations, I think need to be encouraged to be able to look through and decipher through that, because it is still good to sacrifice for the good of well, let me finish this thought. It's good to sacrifice for the well-being of others, especially the country in which you live.
Yep.
It's also important to, understand your mission. I think when I hear Audie Murphy, that dude had a mission.
Yes, he did.
Right? Like, and I'm not talking a mission in the sense of like, oh yeah, go into North Africa or go into Italy, right? Like, no, his mission was to go and serve.
Yep.
He knew what he was being called to do. And I think that, for our modern generation, we lack a lot of that. We don't have a mission. Our mission has become, our purpose, our mission has become to serve ourselves and to be selfish.
What other, I like what you said there, purpose, selfless. What other virtues do you see Audie Murphy demonstrating?
Courage.
Courage? Absolutely. Mike, what about you? What other virtues do you see Audie Murphy demonstrating after hearing his story?
Okay, so if you're asking me questions about virtues of people, though, I'm going to be that person who's like, I'm not going to give you a solid answer till I know actually more about the person. Like, I can watch an act, but I'm going to still have to wonder about motivations of acts. Not saying that the acts themselves aren't indicative of certain things. Like, was he brave and courageous? Yeah, it takes a lot to stand in a machine, like to take a house by yourself, to charge a line. Like, I'm not discrediting any of that. We are speculating on some of the motivations, and associating with what is traditionally masculine and male, or how we'd like to go. I'm saying that because there's always outliers.
He has an autobiography, so there is that.
I haven't read it though. You're asking me my view on something that my personality type. I'm like, I won't give you answers because I don't know enough of the information to give you an answer I would feel comfortable.
What is your thought?
Let me rephrase my question. Yeah, judging by his actions, what virtues do you see him demonstrating? How about that?
I would say virtues like courage is definitely one of them. I would argue either selflessness could be one of them, but I could also see a lot of those traits coming from somebody who's not necessarily selfless. So again, I'd have to read the autobiography and know more about how he viewed and processed a lot of things. I know it's not answer anyone wants.
No,
but that's my personality type on how
that was weak sauce, dude.
Well, I
was
can
about
always,
as watered down as it gets.
I can see selfish people performing the same actions. I can see
Hang
somebody
on. You can see a selfish person trying to fake their age to get.
Think of it this way: what is somebody's motivation sometimes for going to war? Sometimes it's not necessarily to serve. Sometimes it is to kill.
Sure.
I'm not sure. Follow me with this. I'm not saying the average, right? We're saying, is this a possibility? Yes, it is. There are people who genuinely use war as a rightful means to legally murder people. Like, that's a thing.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah. No, I get what you're saying.
So that's all I'm saying. I'm like, I'm not saying that this is what Eddie Murphy did. I want more information before I'd be like, this is the virtue.
Eddie Murphy?
Did you just call him Eddie Murphy?
I think you just called him Eddie Murphy.
They're
slightly different.
I think we need a spinoff where Eddie Murphy plays Audie Murphy.
As long as I was going to say Charlie Murphy. Charlie Murphy.
No, so like that's
the
my
only thing that came to my head when you said that.
And that's kind of like the thing I would want to value. That's why I said, like, even when I'm curious what the exact motivations were for joining wars.
Sure.
I know a lot of times, especially in our cultures, we idolize war a lot, which is, or we glorify war. I'm sorry. And a lot of cultures do that, like where it's honorable to die in war, these are good things. But again, even that could have been another motivation. Like, I'm going to war and I'm charging the hills because I want to die. Like, that is a thing too. So I'm not saying that he's these things. I just know very little about Audie Murphy.
Okay.
And I don't know any of this information. So I would not derive a lot of virtues from that.
That made more sense. I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
And also, you got to realize too, every one of us thinks very differently.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
The way Mike processes things is so different than the way I do. And then at the same time, I've also studied this guy since I was a kid. When I was like 12 or 11 years old at my grandpa's house watching this movie and then going and looking him up. And one of the things you also have to realize is the time period.
Mhm.
You have to realize that in that time period, if you look at most of the men, and I mean a very large majority
Yeah.
of the men who served in World War II, if you ask them, why did you serve? They said, well, because you're supposed to.
Mhm.
That's, if you didn't serve, you're a coward. You're a weak.
Yeah.
What do you want to do? In 10 years, when your kids ask you, Dad, what'd you do during the Great
Yeah,
War?
no, I'm
well,
aware-
I sat
That's
at home
also the
and
thing, though.
shoveled crap.
I'm very aware of that cultural thing, but I'm also aware of that culturally, it was very easy to mask. Like, we didn't believe in mental health disorders in a lot
Sure.
of those things. We didn't
Sure.
understand
Well,
that the way that PTSD affects
and,
me.
and I
So
understand
there's a lot of things that. So,
but
I'm,
if you go and watch the interviews of these guys, and I know you
Again,
haven't,
I-
but
yeah, so that's
what
why
I'm
like,
saying
coming
is
in
like,
cold.
if you look at the vast majority of those soldiers, most of them serve
We'll say
for
that,
the
yeah.
right reasons. And when you're put in a situation where it's you, men go to war to get glory. Okay, but the guys who only want glory, are they going to be the ones who put themselves in the most dangerous situations?
Not usually, no.
No, I mean, however, then there is the counter side to that with someone like Custer.
Sure.
Put himself in a dangerous position for glory and got him and his men slaughtered like an idiot.
Yeah, I mean, you could probably, but there's more at play there, right?
And by the way, I'm
There's-
trying to back up your point.
No,
with that. By the way,
appreciate
yeah,
that,
I was trying to support your point. So I get what you were saying.
I'm usually
No.
bringing them like, if I don't have the information to make a conclusive, and that's why I'm like, I'm
yeah,
not
I get what
chiming
you're
in
saying.
on what
I
my
get what you're
virtues
saying.
are. It's
I
just,
do think though we do need to. There is value in doing that, Mike, but I also think we have to look at the culture to inform things too, right?
That's fair.
Because if you're not looking at it through the lens of the culture, it's very easy to go, well, we don't know what his motivation is,
Yeah.
looking at it this way, right? And you're not wrong, but at the same time, who truly knows anybody's motivation?
Correct.
Right? Like, and so I think all we have to go on are, what's being told, their actions. I think their actions do to, and maybe one or two can be one-offs, but when you start to put it all together, right, that picture starts to become clearer. Then you put them in the context of that time period, right? And it's like, okay, a lot of the guys during that time period felt like it was their, like they felt the duty to serve.
That's the word I was looking for.
Right.
That's, in fact, that's one of the reasons why I asked that question.
Yeah.
Honor and duty.
Sure.
When I think of masculinity, those two words come to mind.
Yeah.
A true man demonstrates honor, and he always has that purpose, that duty, and adheres to that.
Yeah.
Even if I don't want to do it, I'm going to, because it is my duty. And if
Yep.
I don't,
Yep.
I'm betraying myself. I'm betraying myself as a man. I'm
Yeah.
betraying, my beliefs, my culture.
Sure.
You have to realize a huge part of that culture back then was duty, honor. It is your
Absolutely.
duty to
Yep.
help the family. It is your duty to stand to go and serve.
Yep.
It is your duty as a man. And some may say that's could be a negative, right? That almost that nationalistic, like get the young men worked up and send them off to war. You know what I mean? Like, but again, in this case, in World War II,
Sure.
you saw the genuineness and the sincerity in so
Yeah.
many of these men. If you go and read Band of Brothers, if you go and read Audie Murphy's story, you see the genuineness of honor and duty. Go read about Desmond Doss. Honor, duty, sacrifice,
Yeah.
and the willingness to put yourself in that position for the sake of all of those things.
Yeah.
And that's kind of why I asked that question. And what I was trying to see was like, when you see those actions always speak louder than words. When you see someone who consistently is where his men speak highly of him, what does that tell you about him? Is he there for the glory, or is he there for his men, for his country, for that duty, for that service, for that honor?
When you have a large body of work that speaks to that, right? Like I
And
think
that's
that's
what
where
I was trying
that's
to
where,
get at.
yeah. And I mean, and Mike, I appreciate your perspective though, because it keeps us honest, right? Like that's something that we need to continually like look at and try to poke at, because it can be very easy to prop people up in a way and go, oh, look at what they did for this reason or that reason. And we need to make sure we're holding them accountable, and we're basically taking the measuring stick and going, do you actually measure up?
Yeah.
And so I appreciate
and that's just
that,
why
your
I was like,
perspective.
you asked me the question, I'm like, I haven't seen any of the things to measure, so I don't feel comfortable giving that answer
Sure.
because I'm like, I can see alternatives. Not just, I think all of your guys' points are valid. I'm not discounting any of them. It's just, I don't
Stop
have
arguing
that
with
I
me.
was trying to get you to go past your.
Yeah, I don't do that.
I don't know it
It's-
100%, so I'm not going to say it. But like,
I need 70%.
that's what I was going for. But I
need-
knew you wouldn't, so
yeah.
it was also fun.
Well, and
I like to
and
poke you a little bit. I'm
here's
sorry.
here's the other thing, right? It's interesting that we can draw a parallel between him and Captain America,
Mhm.
not just because not just because of his actions on the battlefield, but apparently the motivations that are driving both of these characters. Because again, you put this guy in a Marvel movie, and we're not going, well, we don't know why he did this. We don't do, like, we're just looking at it going, and I think that's where you can see value. And even if down in his deepest, darkest heart, he had the wrong reason to do that, right? What played out from that was incredibly positive.
We can still emulate those actions.
I was gonna say, I think it's interesting. Like, I mean, we keep bringing up Steve Rogers, like the comics. I mean, how many other places in media and art and entertainment do we see those same archetypes, that same hero being portrayed? Like,
yes,
we have video games where we want to be this guy, right? We have movies and everything.
Yep.
And I know I mentioned, like, we don't want to glorify war
when you were playing as a kid,
but
that's who you were.
That's who you were. But I'm like, that I think is something to speak to. Maybe not necessarily like a virtue that he displayed that was manliness, but like it was a lifestyle and a series of things that like all men kind of have this thing ingrained in us where like we are seeking those things through these actions a lot. Like we want to be that.
Back to that confidence. We were talking about this last time, that almost there's something inside of men that always want to gain some sort of skill. We were talking about it with video games. You remember that? We were talking about like wanting to be the best at something, but at the same time, you take that mindset and add to it the honor, the duty, the sacrifice, the selflessness. And that's when you get heroism.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like that's when you get true heroism.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's so important, is it's those ingredients mixed together.
Well, and it's not even just mixed together, it's aligned properly. Because I think that you know, and I my hope is, as we go through this, I think we're going to continually see themes like this. And it's really like, how do we align these properly so that we can become good men, so that we can become a true man. No, that's good.
Yeah. Any final thoughts on Audie Murphy's, fellas? What'd you think?
Again, I was blown away last night watching Captain America and going, this is Audie Murphy.
Like, this is what we're going to talk about tomorrow.
We're going to talk about this tomorrow. And I literally Googled, is Captain America based on Audie Murphy? And it was just blown away. And again, it's not often that we come across, or maybe we don't tell it. Maybe this is part of what our culture lacks, is we don't do good storytelling. We tell things that are interesting or are distracting, but we're not telling the things that are beneficial, that show good examples of what men should be.
Wow, what a comment. We're not making things that are beneficial. We're just making things that are distracting.
We're not telling stories. The stories that we're telling are not good stories.
Yeah, but isn't it interesting though, when you do see a new movie come out that has a good story, that something about it where you could tell, wow, the person making this wanted to communicate some sort of goodness or truth or beauty to the world, and you can really see it. It's not just there to be flashy and distract. You can see that. I mean, think about Marvel movies. The newest set of Marvel movies, Phase 4, whatever it is, or Phase 4 or 5, whatever the heck they're on, I haven't even seen them because they just look like soulless garbage. But you go back and you watch Winter Soldier and you feel the soul that's in the movie. The person who made that movie, Captain America 1, 2, and 3, understood the character and the themes of Captain America: duty, honor, selflessness.
Yeah.
You see it in every single one of the movies. Every scene Steve Rogers is in, you can feel it, that the person who made that loved those characters so much and loved the themes behind the characters. Iron Man even, well, I think 2 and 3 were terrible, but his journey in the Avengers movies was phenomenal. I watched a video on it the other day where the guy was showing like how Tony Stark learns in the next movie from the previous movie. Yeah. And I never noticed that before. I was like, oh, that's really cool. And then you see him eventually, like, think about it. His first movie, he's the most selfish.
Oh, so selfish.
Dude's just kind of a prick, right? Like, he's just a selfish jerk,
they
right?
talk about how, like, him and Steve Rogers, when they're talking on the helicarrier, he's like, you're not the kind of guy who would, like, jump on the grenade or, like, step on the wire or something like that. He's like, I would just cut the wire. Like, his mindset at that point is, I can defeat and outsmart everything. And at the end, when he gets the gauntlet from Thanos, he's like,
the one who steps on the grenade.
I have to be the one to step on.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's full. Yeah. And I think
good,
he goes from
I think
selfish
that's also
to
interesting because, like,
selfless.
even that character arc, I think, is probably really appealing because you see Steve Rogers on this one hand, and he is the optimum guy.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
He's the man's man.
Yep.
And you see his character arc is more of this one of like, okay, I need to understand that I should not blindly follow, but I can still be the optimal man, right?
Yep.
Tony Stark's character development is actually more of like the he's hyper intelligent, right? But it is more of what every guy wants to go through. It's, I need to learn that I'm no longer just serving myself and I can't solve everything, and that the greater good is to me serving everybody else. And the only way to do that is as the collective and being part of the team. So like, I like that as all these characters. I mean, we could probably talk about Marvel characters and how these are archetypes of how men should behave.
We'll get there.
We'll probably get there. But and we are kind of talking about one right now with Audie Murphy.
Yeah.
But I do think that, I mean, bringing these all together and even going back to Audie Murphy, it is that he is this, what all of us want to kind of be as an end goal. It's really interesting to see that.
Yeah.
Well, and sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just say, part of the reason it resonates so strongly is because of how closely it is to the truth.
To
the truth.
Oh yeah.
It is so aligned, and I think that we see that, and that's why stories are powerful. Is because when they touch on the truth, they create a visceral reaction in us that we cannot help but be moved by.
Yep. Yes. Oh, I like that. Be moved by.
Yeah.
One thing I did want to mention about Tony Stark that I thought was really interesting.
Yeah.
You notice when he really changes.
Yeah.
Is when he has a family.
Oh. Interesting.
I thought that was really. I think it'd be interesting to have.
That's when he's got something. He's like, I can't go do this anymore.
Yeah, he has something to fight for now, not just himself.
Yeah,
but someone to serve, someone to love, and someone to take care of. And I think that is a huge part of masculinity.
No, that's cool.
Well, it kind of goes back to even like what you
family.
guys brought up, like for Audie Murphy. Like you were bringing up service and putting yourself in front of other people. It is a step to take to realize that I'm not the most important guy in the room and I'm not serving just myself. Like that is a growth in being part of being a man, is being able to see like, I'm here to serve a role to serve other people. And it's not just me. Like you can build yourself up, right, to become useful to other people. But in the end, to be a man is to be able to serve. Like that's one thing that we're seeing from this.
I want to end this with, I actually printed off one of his poems.
Cool.
And this is actually easily his most famous one.
Which one is it?
This is called The Crosses Grow on Anzio.
Give me a sec.
You're good, don't worry. Crosses Grow on Anzio.
I have that one actually. I looked it up and
it is.
Oh crap! I just screwed up my screen.
It's very good.
Guys, I know you guys can't see this, but this is so fun for us to watch.
It's amusing, let me tell you.
Yeah.
Got buttons everywhere.
I'm glad I'm not the one who's having to
I know, man. I
click on things.
Mike,
which by the end of it, you might, like in a couple weeks after really getting to it, it'll be like playing a first-person shooter. You're going to be good to go.
I hope
it'll just be a natural
move it over.
feel there.
Yeah,
I hope so.
All right, so we're gonna end with this poem here.
Okay.
So this is called The Crosses Grow on Anzio. Oh, gather round me, comrades, and listen while I speak of a war, where hell is 6 feet deep. Along the shore the cannons roar, or oh, how can a soldier sleep? The going slow on Anzio, and hell is 6 feet deep. Praise be to God for this captured sod, that rich with blood does seep, with yours and mine like butchered swines, and hell is 6 feet deep. That death awaits, there's no debate, no triumph will we weep, or will we reap. The crosses grow on Anzio, where hell is 6 feet deep.
Dang.
Apparently he wrote that when he was 19.
No. Did he? Because it was, that's
what this site just said.
Okay, because it was the Battle of Anzio. I think it was published in 1948 then. But yeah, Battle of Anzio in Italy, just a miserable thing. Incredible man.
Yeah.
There's a lot to remember about him, and this is what I want to end with here. As a history teacher, my students ask me, why do we study history? And I asked them that question at the beginning of the year, and I've had kids ask, why do we even study history? For those of you who watched this and had never heard of Audie Murphy, well, guess what? Now you know. So now your job is to take what you learned about this man, apply it to your own life, but share his story.
Yeah.
Share his story. What's the best way to honor these incredible stories from history?
Tell him.
Tell him.
Yeah.
Go tell the story. Go find a friend and say, hey, you heard of Audie Murphy? Let me tell you about him.
Yeah.
And go spread this man's story around. And not only that, not only are you spreading the story, but you're spreading those actions and the virtues behind them.
Yep.
And through history, through these men, may we become better men.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Hey, thank you guys for joining us today. What a fun episode. I'm so excited to keep doing these. If you can't tell, I have a incredible passion for history. I love the past. I love looking at what these great men and women have done. And, for us on this podcast, being able to look at good men and discuss their stories, share them with you. It's a way for us to honor those men, and it's a way for us to grow and become better men ourselves. So hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Beyond the Beard. Man, had a great time.
Yeah, buddy.
You guys have a good one. We'll see you in the next episode.
All right, guys. Journey well.
Wait this silent, you'll be alone. Far from friends in life. You'll spend your evenings getting stoned.